Okay, so now we're actually going to lyse our sample and wash the emulciflex. And so, as I went in the video about washing the emulciflex, there's basically two controls. There's an electrical control and then the air control. And so electrical control just controls the pump. You can turn it on off, obviously, by the two buttons. And then the pressure control controls actually the actual lysis. And so the main rule of the emulciflex, not the only way, but one of the easiest way of screwing it up is to bring this pressure up without having any liquid there. So the rule of thumb, or the rule period, is before ever touching this knob, you want to make sure that this here has sample, and the sample went all the way through the system, through out here, into the hose. So you want to see the sample flowing through the hose before you touch this knob. Very important. The main rule. Okay, so you wash the emulciflex. What next? So now you have nicely homogenized sample, like here. So this is going to be E. coli today. So the E. coli sample, or any sample, the main thing is for it not to be chunky. This is not like Campbell's soup. Chunky is not good. So you want it to be nicely homogenized. There are multiple ways of doing it. You could either put it through Downs homogenizer, some people do it, or you could, I actually just pass it through a 16 gauge needle with a syringe. If all your sample went through a 16 gauge needle, then it's going to be perfectly fine for the emulciflex. And so what we're going to do next is we're just going to pour the sample right into here, like that. Alright, and so as you can see, now our sample is there. And so next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little stopper here with a hole in it, and we're going to put it on our hose over here, like that. Like this. And then we're going to start. So again, to start, you need to rotate this knob, like so, and then you press the start button. And so we are just going to wait for a sample to start coming out. So we should see sample coming out. You know, it'll obviously be cloudy. And so you can see sample is traveling. And then once it gets to the end of the hose, we press stop. Once we press stop, we just put the stuff here, make sure this is sealed. And so you don't want to disturb this hose too much because it can very easily fly out and then spray your sample everywhere. So now we just, again, undo this, press start button, and so now our sample is going in a circle. So that's good news. And so next thing is to do is, once everything is filled and this hose is completely filled, is we bring the pressure up. So to bring, first you always start by bringing the pressure up to about 40. And so you just screw this in till you see 40 here, and you should start hearing the piston, the lysing chamber. And then if that happens, it means that one of the check valves balls didn't seal. So just bring it back to 0, and then take this gizmo over here and just poke it a little bit, and try again. Okay, so it's behaving very strangely. This is not the healthy emulsiflex sound, but so you can see as how this pressure is going up. And so what we want to do is we want to bring this pressure to control this pressure. And so the idea is that this pressure should be around between 15 and 20,000 psi, and the psi in black. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just crank this up till the peak pressure is between 15 and 20, like that. Perfect. And so you have to constantly regulate the input pressure, to have the desired pressure at the output. And so when your samples are less than about 100 mils, this recirculation trick works pretty well. And so what I usually do, so what I usually do is I do about 10 minutes like this. And so right now it's about 10 p.m. And so at 10:10 we can bring it, we can stop. So the rule of the rules now are not to leave the emulsiflex because the pressure can spike up or down, and you never know what's going to happen, what can malfunction, and so you always want to be present. You never want to leave the machine alone, so that if something happens, you can stop the machine immediately. And so right now everything is lysing fine, and usually as sample gets thinner as you go through lysis, you might have to crank the pressure up a little bit to bring it up. But like right now, for example, it's going a little bit above 20,000, and so we can just bring the input pressure down a little bit so that it goes right in between 20 and 15,000, like so. And that's pretty much it. For next 10 minutes, you basically stand here and you regulate this one knob, making sure that the hose is still connected, and then the pressure is where you want it. After this is done, after your 10 minutes are out, what you do is you basically bring this pressure down, and the trick here is when you bring the pressure down to 0, you do not want to keep unscrewing this. Once it touches the needle, you're pretty much done. So because this will come out, and it's very easily cross-threadable, and then it can, it's a $200 part, which is you don't want to unnecessarily change it. But anyhow, so when your 10 minutes are out, you bring it to 0, and you press stop, and then you take your centrifuge tube, and then you basically fill it up with your sample. You get all your sample out. So as you can see, there's some chunky bit, or not, I guess not chunky, there are no chunks, but thicker bit, and then you can see that I had to bring the input pressure quite a bit down, just to make sure that it's staying between 15 and 20,000. So yeah, so I guess you just stand here, you watch it do its magic. So usually 10 minutes is about good. You can usually also see your sample visibly get clearer and thinner, where it's not gooey anymore, where all the DNA gets broken up. And so just as a general background, so the actual lysis is happening in this chamber, where this high pressure pump basically pushes your sample through this very tight piston, ceramic piston and ceramic seat, which press against each other. And then they're under spring, and that's where you apply the input pressure. So the more input pressure, the harder the piston sits against the seat, the harder it is for the pump to push the sample through. And then what happens there is that the very fast motion of the piston against the seat causes the cavitation bubbles, and that actually is what ruptures your cells, like the same cavitation bubbles which cause corrosion on like submarine props and things like that. So it's a cute trick. So thing to keep in mind is that emulciflex does bump the temperature of your sample up by about 1 centigrade for every 1,000 of psi you use. That's why we have a cold jacket right here, which cools it off, so that you try to minimize that effect. But if your stuff is temperature sensitive, it's something to keep in mind. Okay, and I guess we'll go over how to stop and clean the emulsiflex in the next video.